Well, you know what they say, all good things come in threes. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the network, where today we're continuing our AliExpress adventures by taking a look at some more AliExpress console mods and accessories. Now, if you haven't seen the last part, I'll have a link below in the description and on the end card so that you can see the previous items that we took a look at, but we have 4 new items today. But without any further ado, let's take a look at what's in the bag. Now, first up, we have this N64 adapter. Now, if you're familiar with the Wii to HDMI adapters, this little device should not be too foreign to you, as it's basically a Wii to HDMI adapter, but as you can see, it's for the N64. Now, this thing promises full 1080p, and the P is capitalized, which just makes that look weird, and it has a 3.5mm output jack. Not sure why you would need that, maybe if you wanted to put it into a sound system, but yeah. Now, this little device came in at $6.97 at the time of purchase, and I mean, overall the build quality, it feels pretty good. It feels like a, one of the Wii to HDMI adapters, but the real question is does this thing function well? Because my history with those Wii to HDMI adapters is that it's a hit or a miss. I ordered like 6 or 7 of them, and they all kind of sucked. I had a buddy, he had one, and his was good, so I don't know. We'll have to see if this thing actually can live up to its claims of giving us 1080p and 64 HDMI out. Now, a little disclaimer on this device, this thing doesn't actually make the N64 natively 1080p, it's still a 240p image, they just blow it up to fit a 1080p, resolution. So there could be some issues with that, but we won't know that until we plug this thing in. So let's go ahead and plug this into the N64 and give it a look-see. So now that we're over on the N64, we can test out our N64 to HDMI adapter. Now, this device is actually super simple to install, as all you need to do is plug it into the N64's multi-out, and you're pretty much all good to go. So we have a nice HDMI out, so I'll just set this back down. All right, then we'll grab our HDMI cable, plug it in, and that should be good to go. So all that's left to do is test her out. We'll plug in 007 Everything or Nothing as our cartridge of choice, and we'll turn it on. So it does look like this device is working. It is indeed outputting a 1080p signal. However, the only downside of this is it appears to be stretching the video to widescreen instead of its original 4:3. So if that's something that bothers you, this may not be the best option for you. In terms of the video quality, it definitely is, a little to be desired. It is blurry, but then again, that's what the N64 already looked like. So there's not really much of a difference there. It definitely appears to be playable. There doesn't seem to be any input lag, so that's nice. I would just say that if you are looking for a really good video out solution for your N64, I would recommend either doing an RGB or an HDMI mod. But if you're in a pinch and you just want to plug your N64 into your TV and all you have is HDMI, this adapter is not the worst thing in the world. I would definitely say there are better options out there. But with that, let's head on back to the bench and take a look at our next item. All right, up next we have, well, whatever this thing is. I cannot read that at all, but we'll go ahead and just open her up and see what's inside. And for this, we have a PS2 memory card. Now, in the last video that we did, we took a look at an MX4 SIO adapter for the PS2, and what that thing did was it allowed you to play your game backups through a memory card via an SD card. Now, what you needed in order for that to work was a FreeMCBoot memory card that was running a software known as OPL. Now, I'll have links down below in the video description to all the items showcased in this video in case you want to purchase any of these for yourself. Now, taking a look at this memory card, it does feel pretty good. It is an aftermarket PS2 memory card, which when you're using FreeMCBoot, they advise against using third parties or aftermarket cards as they're not really reliable. So in a pinch, if you really wanted to use one of these to launch FreeMCBoot, you could. Just know that the longevity of it probably isn't a factor when you're purchasing cheap cards like this. But if you want to soft mod your PS2 so that you can play game backups, test controllers and the works, this could potentially be an item that you might want to get. So with that being said, let's go ahead and plug this thing into a PS2 and see what came installed on it. Alright, so now that we're over on our PS2, we'll go ahead and take our FreeMCBoot memory card and plug it into memory card slot 1 on the console. And if everything works correctly when we turn it on, we should be greeted with the FreeMCBoot menu. So it looks like everything is working. We are in FreeMCBoot. So let's take a look at what came pre-installed on this memory card. So we have ULaunch ELF, which is the file browser, Open PS2 loader, got HD loader in case you wanted to use a hard drive, simple media system, which I guess lets you play, you know, DVDs and stuff, launch disk, normal, code break, I guess that would be like your, what do you call it, your Game Shark codes, USB Advanced, GSM, and the configurator. So this does come with some pretty good apps pre-installed. So this FreeMCBoot memory card is working currently, but once again, I do have to reiterate that if you do want to run FreeMCBoot or are planning on using it frequently, I would highly recommend that it gets installed on a official PS2 memory card, as third-party and aftermarket cards aren't the most reliable for the long term. But I would have to say this card's pretty good if you just want to mess around with FreeMCBoot for an afternoon or something, but if you're planning on using this, you know, often, I would highly recommend getting it on an official PS2 memory card. So with that being said, let's head on back to the table and take a look at our next item. Okay, next up we have a relatively large package, which I believe contains an item for the Dreamcast. So let's go ahead and dig on into that thing and see if my hunch is correct. Oh wow, it's a box! That was a really lame dad joke. But yes, it is indeed what I thought it was going to be. So this is a copy of DreamShell and its accompanying serial port adapter. So what this DreamShell disc is supposed to do is load into a bootloader that allows you to play your Dreamcast games via a adapter that goes into the serial port on the back of the Dreamcast. And that is what this thing came with, or this little device should be, if I can get it out of its little plastic wrap. Now this is probably one of the easiest forms of like a plug-and-play solution to play your Dreamcast games off of something other than, you know, a GMU or a GDMU, I believe is what it's called, which is an SD card replacement for the Dreamcast disk drive. So without any further inspection on this, let's go ahead and head on over to the Dreamcast and see if this thing works. Alright, so now we're over on the Dreamcast so that we can test out our SD to Dreamcast serial port adapter and our copy of DreamShell. Now, in order to get this SD card adapter to work with DreamShell, you will have to preload some software on your SD card before plugging it in. Now, I've already done that off camera, but if you guys would like a guide on how to set up your SD card and use DreamShell, go ahead and leave a comment down below and we can tackle that in another video. But with that being said, in order to attach this adapter to your Dreamcast, you'll just have to navigate to the back of the system, and then just underneath the power port, you'll see this empty port. This is the serial port for the Dreamcast and where our SD card adapter will be plugged in. So if I can do this one-handed, come on, get in there. Okay, so that is definitely a very tight fit in order to get that in there. And this adapter is a little loose, it's wiggly. So first tick, that build quality is kind of, you know, iffy. But we'll go ahead and turn the Dreamcast on. We'll go ahead and we'll just skip through the time and date setup because we don't really care about that. And then we will open up our Dreamcast and insert our DreamShell disc and see if everything here wants to work. I'm definitely kind of on the fence on if this will work or not, mainly because that SD card adapter is kind of, you know, iffy. So far so good. We are getting to the Sega boot up. It said it did not find the SD card. DreamShell bootloader version 2.4, boot from CD or boot from RAM. I guess we're gonna boot from the CD because we don't have anything installed on the system. Interesting. So yeah, I am mashing the buttons here and nothing is starting the DreamShell bootloader. So I'm not sure if that's the I know that this controller functions, so I'm not sure why it's not going past this screen. So my guess is that it's not finding the bootloader because it's not reading my SD card, and that is probably a fault of this SD card adapter. That or my expansion port might be broken on this Dreamcast. I don't know, but we're not getting it past the DreamShell bootloader screen. So with that, I mean, we'll just wrap up this Dreamcast thing here, and we'll head on back over to the bench and take a look at our next item. All right, and last but not least, we have this very, very paper thin package. So if memory serves correctly, this should be another package, I guess. But no, in all seriousness, this should be a little board that you can plug on the underside of your thumbsticks to fix controller drifting. So the purpose of this little board is to take these 6 pins along the side and solder them onto the legs of the thumbstick control module inside of your controller. And then once you've soldered those in, you have access to these 2 potentiometers, which will allow you to set an offset for the 0 value of your thumbstick. And I do have a controller with stick drift that we can test this thing out on. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get the controller apart and attach this thing to it and see if we can get it all up and running. So here's the controller in question that we'll be testing one of these drift fixing pads on. Now, I got this from one of my co-hosts, and he says that there is significant drifting on this controller. So to test that, what we're going to do is head on over to the website Gamepad Tester, and then we'll just plug in our controller to the computer and press a couple buttons, and we should get a readout of the controller. Now, with this, we can take a look at the thumbsticks to see exactly which one is drifting and where it thinks its 0 positions are. And right off the bat, we're seeing the right analog stick drifting straight up, so that is the one we're going to want to put one of our drift pad fixes on. The left analog stick looks to be okay. So now that we have that information, we'll go ahead and we'll disconnect this controller from the computer, and then we will take this thing apart. All right, so we now have the controller stripped down to the main board, or at least to the point where we need it so that we can attach our little drift fixing pads. So to identify where your analog sticks are connected to on this back PCB, your left analog stick is right here, this set of pins, and your right analog stick is right here in this set of pins. So because this one is having a big drift issue on the left analog stick, we're going to go ahead and solder this thing onto the left set of points. All right, now that we have the drift fix soldered into the board right there, let's go ahead and plug it back into the computer so that we can get an accurate readout for the analog sticks, and then we can adjust the potentiometers as needed to try to center the sticks. So if we take a look at this thing, so it looks like the thumbstick is drifting a little bit down and to the right. So what we'll do is we'll flip this thing over and then adjust the potentiometer until we can get that black dot perfectly centered. And there we go. Then we'll flip this thing back over to its neutral position. You always want to test this while the thumbsticks are facing up and in their neutral positions, so that you get an accurate reading. And from the looks of it, that seems to have fixed the analog stick. Now, the great thing about these little analog drift fixes is this board is modular. So say in, a couple months or so of heavy use, your thumbstick starts drifting again, all you have to do is take it apart, hook it back up to your computer, and then, just calibrate the thumbstick again, and then you're good to go. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and put this controller back together, and we'll wrap it up. So overall, all these devices seem to be somewhat functional. The only thing that, is a little questionable is this DreamShell thing over here, and it very well could either be an issue with this SD card adapter, or it is a problem with my Dreamcast and its expansion bay port. So that we will chalk up to, the device, the hardware, possibly. But when it comes to these three, they did seem to work fairly well. This drift fix thing did fix the Xbox One controller, FreeMCBoot memory card works, and N64 To HDMI does what it says on the tin. So if you enjoyed, remember to leave a like and subscribe so that you don't miss any future videos from the network. And if you guys want to see more AliExpress console mods and accessories, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and we can definitely take a look at some more items. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.